fucking slime. How do you know they're not your sister? Stop it! Fuck off my Xbox!
Fucking slime.
Fucking damn it, Ibrahim! I can't do this!
Take a break, sweetheart. Let her rip.
The Bear is one of the most stressful TV shows I've ever seen, but man, is it so damn good. This show manages to make episodes feel so long, yet so short at the same time. It's one of my favorite shows to come out recently, and every time I watch it, I get sucked in and taken on a roller coaster of emotions. The characters in this show are written so well, and the ways they interact feel so real. They could be any of the people you know from your local mom and pop shop. But it can be so hard to watch. It's stressful. So stressful, mind you, that many people who worked in the service industry couldn't get through the show because it was too realistic to the kitchen environment. And I get it. From the close-up shots of the characters' faces making things feel claustrophobic at times, to the fast-paced cutting, which is at times paired with loud sound design that can give anyone sensory overload. It seems like every episode something goes wrong, and it leads to the scene becoming very tense. I mean, this show is about a chef coming back home to run his brother's restaurant after he passes away. I didn't expect it to get so intense, but it does. It can be something simple like an argument between two people. But it can also be... The way the show is shot and edited is what makes things feel so intense. But what makes it worth watching? Simple. The characters. And man, let me tell you, the characters are amazing. The character progression in The Bear is a true treat to see. In Season 1 alone, seeing how each character evolves through Carmen and Sydney's changing of
System!
was awesome. Seeing how Tina and Marcus, for instance, after being hesitant about them at the beginning, end up looking up to them as mentors was really heartwarming. Tina seems to feel threatened by Sydney and doesn't want anything to change. She gets petty, acts like she can't understand her, and goes far enough to actively ruin something she was working on. But later on, when she's struggling, Sydney saves the day when Tina is in need, and it changes the way she sees her. She gets praise from Sydney at one point, and from then on out, she sees her as an inspiration and looks up to her. This leads to Sydney ultimately confiding in Tina to become her Sue, and Tina couldn't be happier. It's one of the many heartwarming moments in the show that make everything so worthwhile. Now, Marcus goes on a different but similar path. He wasn't actively hostile to Carmen, but he did feel a little off when he was given advice.
Just do it.
This was likely due to how hostile the kitchen was at the time. But he takes Carmen's advice about the bread and finds that he was right, and so he begins to respect him. When he finally makes the donut he's been trying to achieve, albeit at the worst time, Carmen blows up in his face and destroys the donut. He's disappointed. The one he looked up to destroyed what he was searching for, and he quit feeling like he didn't care. But eventually they make up, and in the second season, Marcus heads off to Copenhagen and improves even more before coming back inspired. These are just two of the many character arcs throughout the show, and they aren't even done. But there's one more in particular that has genuinely surprised me so much that it won me over. And that has to do with... I really disliked Richie in the first season. He's annoying, he's kind of a dick, and I, like others in the show, had no idea what this man was doing at the beef.
Richie was doing whatever the fuck Richie does.
Halfway through season 1, I was seriously wondering why he was still allowed to work there. He was not serious enough
Scoffy gay?
and actively made things worse. In the beginning of the second season, he actively stood in others' way, desperately trying to be useful in ways that harmed more than anything, and he was just so infuriating. But god damn it, he's now my favorite character in the whole show. His arc is so damn amazing to witness, and it managed to turn me around completely on his character. He cares a lot about the people around him, which you first see in episode 2 when he talks to his daughter. it gives you some sympathy for his character. He's insecure, he doesn't feel like he has a purpose, which he tells Carmen in the first episode of season 2. He means well, but doesn't know the right way to do certain things. But slowly, he gets better, and finally everything comes together in episode 7 of season 2. Richie thinks that Carmen is punishing him by taking him to another restaurant that is the best in the world, where all he's doing is cleaning forks. But while he's there, he asks everyone how they can do what they do. Work in the kitchen, work in Expo, etc. He learns about how everything works, and in a scene that genuinely made me emotional and so happy for Richie was when he comes back to tell Jess that a table was sad they're leaving Chicago without trying deep dish. And Richie is sent out to get a local restaurant's deep dish, brings it back, then the chef prepares a plate, then they allow Richie to bring out the plate to the guests, and he surprises them with the dish. And all of them are in shock. And one of them literally even says,
You did not hear me say that.
Richie walks back with a sense of accomplishment. And the episode finally ends with Richie's conversation with Chef Terry, in which she relays that Carmen believes in him, that he's good with people, and Richie stares at the sign overlaid with every second counts, finally understanding purpose. And the suit he wears fully showing that Richie is now a changed man. It's a phenomenal episode and is one of my absolute favorites in the entire show. It is the turning point of Richie's character and was what really turned me around and made me love him. And this is just some of the supporting cast. This isn't even mentioning the lead of the show. Carmen is such an interesting character sheerly due to how closed off he is. The relationship he has with his family is at the core of how and why he is the way he is. He's an extremely complex character, and you learn more about him and the Brazzotto family in the second season. He's kind but hot-headed and extremely determined. It's obvious how much he doesn't want to show anyone how he feels, and the family as a whole doesn't really talk much about the way they grew up. The death of Michael was unexpected and very noticeably has taken a serious toll on Carmen in particular. He looked up to him. He wanted to prove to him that he could do well in his restaurant, so he worked his ass off to get to the top of the fine dining world. And to Carmen, it seemed that he didn't care. Throughout the show, you see Carmen dealing with his inner turmoil, something on the surface ready to burst at any moment. We find out later that he chose the service industry on purpose. He chose the high-stress environment of a kitchen to work in because that is the environment he has known all of his life. That is the one he feels most comfortable in. Whether or not this is actually good for him is up to interpretation, but what it creates is his ability to focus on nothing but that. By his own admission, he didn't have any friends, he never had a girlfriend, he devoted his life to just cooking. And the moment he finally lets himself care about someone else, he's terrified. He always seems like he's in two places at once. He's distracted, prone to forgetting, yet focusing on one single task at a given time. This complexity is what makes him such a fascinating character to be the lead on a show. And it seems that everyone else is growing around him, but Carmen doesn't allow himself the opportunity to heal from his own trauma. He'd just rather push it to the side and focus on what drives him to cook. It kind of stagnates him in a way. He focuses on that one thing that, by his own admission, isn't even fun for him.
It's just not fun for me.
Yeah, but you love it.
That doesn't make it fun.
I think there's a side of Carmen that we haven't seen yet, and that Carmen himself is gonna figure out soon in the future. I mean, there's so much backstory that's explained in the episode Fishes. It's a flashback episode of a holiday dinner at the Brazzotto family. It's an episode that gives a lot of insight into how Carmen must have grown up. And this episode is a lot. Dare I say it's the hardest episode to sit through. It's also the longest episode in the entire series at a full hour long. This episode showcases how dysfunctional of a family the Berzados are and how badly it has affected Carmen, Natalie, and Michael. The way these characters interact are much more understandable when you catch a glimpse of this event, which must have been a normality for their lives growing up. It also makes the earlier interactions with Carmi and Sugar make so much sense. Carmi tends to tell her that he's doing okay so she doesn't have to ask, and he rarely asks her if she's okay so that she doesn't think of their mom. This episode feels like a pressure cooker. It felt like everything was slowly building up to a boiling point, which it inevitably does.
Fucking piece of shit!
It also has so many damn good guest characters. I mean, I was thrown for a loop when I saw Bob Odenkirk walk into the room. But something cool that I found out later was that this was intentional. As director Christopher Storer said in an interview with LA Times, quote, "I wanted it to be distracting. I wanted the viewer to be like, what the fuck is Bob Odenkirk doing here? I wanted it to really feel like when you walk into your family's house and you were just overwhelmed by a cousin who you don't want to talk to, an uncle you don't want to see." And it worked. For a brief moment, each guest threw me off, but eventually I became immersed again. And that's just the magic of the show. It gets you to care. I worry if the restaurant is gonna fail, and I so badly hope that everything works out for everyone. All in all, The Bear is one of the best shows on TV right now, and despite how stressful it is to watch at times, it is extremely worth the journey it takes you on. I hope it has a bright future ahead of it because goddamn I love this show so much. I cannot stop thinking about it. I'm pretty sure I've recommended it to everyone I know by now. If you haven't already, go watch The Bear. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, and we'll see you in the next one. Wait, I just realized I didn't even talk about the food. Oh my god, the food looks so good.